boss, in my quest to understand stuff like the existence of God or what's real, a number of philosophers have used a kind of thinking that involves so-called possible worlds, in which a whole array of different ways things might have been are put down to investigate different possibilities, like the existence of God. As a philosopher of science who's thought about these things, what can we say about this kind of possible world thinking?
Well, in some way, we do it all the time. You know, you and I do believe there are different ways things could have gone. We could have done this interview differently. We could have sat in a different place, and so on. So in that way, of course, we all think modally, so to speak. Think in modal terms.
Modal terms meaning possibility.
Possibility, necessity, contingency. It's totally contingent that we are here today. We might have been somewhere else, right? When I look at a rock, I say, oh, maybe I could climb that, right? So that's a possibility there, right there. But then in analytic philosophy, people began to look at the logic of these terms. How do they act logically? What is a valid argument when you are using the word necessity or possibility? And so they actually began to do what you might call theoretical linguistics. What the logic of an argument is depends on what your language is like. And now, you see, now as an empiricist, I say, what is a science supposed to do, including theoretical linguistics? It should save the phenomena. Now, in this case, the phenomena are the way people argue, the way that they reason with these terms.
Okay.
And so then when, for instance, David Lewis brings in possible worlds, he's making up a kind of little scientific theory that fits the way people argue, or it's supposed to. Right? Now, I say the only important thing is it should fit. He thinks that he thought that it is really important that the things he postulates should be real. So, according to him, this theory was a good one only if there really are possible worlds. Now, to me, that's not the way it goes. I mean, I do not think that the science is successful only if the postulated things are there. I say it's successful if it fits the phenomena. And in this case, the phenomena are the way we reason.
Which is the linguistics.
Which is the linguistics, exactly.
Well, now David Lewis, who was your colleague here at Princeton for a long time, certainly staked out the most innovative approach to possible worlds by him claiming that they somehow exist, maybe if not here, someplace else in some way, in a real concrete sense. But that's something of an outlier in terms of the use of possible worlds, a fascinating one to be sure. But others would use it in an abstract way to really investigate the existence of certain things, like, as I said, the existence of God can be one. Another can be abstract objects like numbers or sets, and ask whether those are necessary. Do they appear in all possible worlds?
Yes. So then you get a concept of a possible world as something that's not concrete. This world is very concrete.
Yes.
The other ones perhaps are just abstract objects like mathematical objects or mathematical structures. Okay. Then your theory may work very well anyway. So that you say, all I have is representations. I don't have real other worlds. I have representations that look like a set of worlds. Right. And that framework I have used myself. I have used it in order to investigate quantum logic, deontic logic, that's the logic of ought and permitted, right? The logic of conditional statements, if this were the case and that would be the case. But, I see it as succeeding if it fits the arguments that we give. So I do not give any metaphysical importance to these possible worlds.
So it's not that they are useless, but they are not needed to be real in terms of existing someplace else, and at the same time in some way.
No, they can serve their purpose in logic and philosophy of language without being real in that way.
And is our capacity to understand more about the real world enhanced by using possible worlds as a philosophical argument or a linguistic argument? Is it enhanced or just made more complicated without understanding?
I would say that it enhances our understanding of language, of the structure of language. Mm-hmm. I do not share the idea that it helps us to understand the world better.
So what's an example of how a possible world thinking can help us understand language better?
Well, so for example, in the case of if-then statements, okay, right? Normally you would say, if I'm taller than you, he's tall, and you're taller than Peter, then I'm taller than Peter.
Okay.
Okay? Things like that. Now, so if-then tends to be what we call transitive. But in many examples, it's not like that. Brian Ellis is a philosopher in Australia, and he was visiting here in America, and he said, if I had been home last night, my wife would not have slept alone. And then he added, if my wife didn't sleep alone last night, she was with someone else. Now, if we accept this ordinary transitivity, we would say, if I had been home last night, we would have been 3 in one bed. Now, you see, something went wrong there, right?
Right.
Now, what we can do is we can show that the logic of if-then can be understood very well if you start talking in terms of possible worlds and relations between possible worlds, how they might be close to each other, and so on.
So in other words, it can clarify what may be ambiguous language, whether it's English or any other language.
Yes, and in fact, it can show very surprising features of the language that we use very normally. And then, of course, it will show that sometimes philosophers giving their arguments, they get in trouble when they don't understand that. Oh. And in that way, I think it helps philosophy, certainly. But at a rather abstract level. I know that, of course, I know what you refer to, that there are cases where metaphysics and theology come very close together, or metaphysics and the interpretation of physics, like the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, yes. Right? I think that there's a good tendency to see it in the way that I would like, which is, it helps to understand the structure. It doesn't follow that you have to believe in the reality of those things in order to have that understanding.
The multi-world hypothesis being in quantum mechanics, every time there is a potential observation or a quantum event, that the world splits into yes. infinite numbers of branches and branches of branches. Yes, and that yes. these branches are not just theoretical, but they exist in some kind of reality.
Yes. You see, I think that as a model, it can help you to understand quantum mechanics, how the theory works. As a metaphysical theory, that's ridiculous. Well, to me, as an empiricist, it would be ridiculous to believe in something like that. But it serves its purpose. If you want to understand how this theory works, how you can think your way through it, mm-hmm. then it helps, yes. But it doesn't have to be real for that.